On this podcast, you'll find interviews with high-performing, successful individuals in life sciences. On a weekly basis, we cover their proven methods, principles, strategies, and mindsets to implement new technologies that scale to meet the needs of people in our world.
This episode of Life Science Success is brought to you by 5280 Life Sciences Consulting. If you need help setting your strategy, meeting your operational goals, or are selecting and implementing critical technology in your business, we should talk. Visit 5280lifescience.com to schedule a meeting and find out more.
Today on the Life Science Success Podcast, I have Michael Patterson. Michael Patterson is the CEO of the U.S. Cannabis Pharmaceutical Research and Development Organization, and we'll be covering his career in the cannabis industry, medical marijuana, hemp, cannabis, and research funding. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you so much, Don. Glad to be here live. I love doing live shows. It's always fun.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and honestly, this feels like it's really the time. I mean, there's so much of this stuff that we do all the time with Zoom calls and things like that, and it's great to have something that's recorded. People can go back and play it back, but they can also watch it while we're doing it.
Absolutely. Definitely happy to be here and happy to be on.
Thanks so much. So can you tell the listeners just a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So by career, I'm a licensed occupational therapist and nursing home administrator since 1994. So I currently live in Florida, and I've been working in healthcare now for 27 years. Started as a traveling occupational therapist in Florida, primarily worked in nursing homes, and slowly worked my way up in the therapy world to where I ended up getting my nursing home administrator license. And started running nursing homes. I ran a chain called Avante Group. We were from New Jersey down to Florida. We had we did over 220 million in total sales per year. We had 20 different facilities, and I was the chief operating officer. So I was named in all the lawsuits. So I was sued a lot. And nursing home industry, if you're unfamiliar, it's the most litigious and regulated in America. So I learned a lot about regulation. I learned a lot about risk. And then I moved into private merchant banking because they needed somebody to help them with healthcare acquisitions. They ended up buying a pharmacy company as well as a home health company, in which I helped run and operate those. And then we started a laboratory company as well. In 2013, I got into the cannabis space. 2014, I created U.S. Cannabis Pharmaceutical Research and Development, because coming from a highly regulated space, and if those of you who are listening who have been in regular pharma or regular healthcare, we all know that a new industry of cannabis is going to have to adopt a lot of those rules and laws. So if you already know what those rules and laws are going to be, and you can, quote, predict the future, then you can start doing a lot of great things. And so we started with U.S. Cannabis doing consulting with Indian tribes. If you're unfamiliar, in 2014, the federal government came out and said Indian tribes can grow cannabis on their lands. A lot of the tribes wanted us to come out and explain how that would work. Ironically, a lot of the tribes did not trust the federal government. I wonder why. And they waited. And at that time, they just not tried to move forward. However, a lot of them are starting to move forward now. So we started as a consulting group, and now flash forward up to 2021. We are now partnered with a company called MGMC Pharma Group, which actually does cultivation, processing, and export of cannabis and THC-based products from Southern Africa, Lesotho, and South Africa into Australia and Germany. We're working on creating the largest public-private partnership for COVID vaccine in human history through a deal to a pharmaceutical COVID manufacturer in Italy and a government in the continent of Africa, which could turn into 4 different governments who would be signing on for this. And that would be in potentially 4 other countries in Africa, totaling 1 billion vaccines per year. And then our goal for that deal is, of course, to bring vaccine to the people who need it in Africa, but also we would get a medical cannabis license in each of those countries. So we're looking to build our business not just in vaccine and partnering with vaccine manufacturers, but to do that. And then back here in the States, we are working to apply for a medical cannabis license in the state of Florida. That process is coming back up. It's a very lucrative license. If you're unfamiliar, those licenses sell for anywhere between $50 million and $70 million without any infrastructure. And then our last project, which I'm extremely excited about, is a cryptocurrency project based out of Oklahoma, in which we have created an SEC approved and patented regulatory structure that's based on tribal law as well as American law. And so we're getting ready to implement that in the state of Oklahoma to decrease the amount of fraud that they're currently having. If you're unfamiliar with Oklahoma and cannabis in general in the states, every state is set up like a different country when it comes to laws. So Oklahoma has a very loose law in which anybody who's a resident of Oklahoma pays $3,500 and passes a background check can get a medical cannabis license. That has created some sort of a condition of anarchy in the state. A lot of people are not paying taxes. And so we're working directly with the state of Oklahoma to bring in our system to be able to fix that. And we're excited because once it's set up in Oklahoma, we can cut and paste in multiple states, and we can really start bringing in some more structure overseeing payments because they have the ability to track the plant cannabis, but tracking the payments into the industry is something to where they really want to have that from a blockchain based technology. And that's what we're getting ready to release. So we're very excited about that.
Yeah, it's something that I would say that I know very little about, right? Overall cryptocurrency, but something that keeps coming up over and over again. I know, Elon Musk has even made it, famous, with him buying the Dogecoin, right? So, those sort of things keep coming up. The one question I have for you is, just to kind of start overall, is that there seems to be like a real, stigma with regards to marijuana in general. I know that a lot of it relates to the past, but I guess what are you seeing with regards to the stigma in the industry today, and how are things shifting?
That's a great question, Don. So when I started, let me give you a really good example. When I started doing this in 2013, the significant other I was with at the time, she said, "You can't tell anybody what you do with my friends." So I couldn't tell anybody. And then one time I did tell somebody and I got in trouble, one of her friends. And so after 2 years, it started calming down. But when I started telling people in 2014 what I did, I literally had a situation where a mother put their child behind her legs to protect her from me because I told them what I was doing. So that's kind of where we started, and I was going to go to hell and the world's going to end and all this different silly stuff, to where now it's amazing because I tell people what I do, and instead of going, "Oh my gosh," they go, "Oh my gosh, that's so neat. Oh, wow, that's interesting." So it's kind of turned the corner to where I get excited because people like you with PhDs and MBAs, those types of people are starting to get interested in the more corporate people, and they need to have somebody that can show them the ropes. And that's why I got into the business. I never planned to do this by myself. I have a small team as well as our teams around the world who do our different projects. But my goal has been to motivate and inspire other professionals to kind of make that transition into their industry and come into cannabis, because cannabis is not going to be able to succeed unless we have more intelligent people come into the industry. And so that has been my goal now, and it's going to be my goal moving forward, to decrease that stigma and to bring other people with professional backgrounds into the space.
And I think, the one place that my mind instantly goes is that, it's not, to me, it's not just medical marijuana. Psychedelics are the same way. And you're seeing a lot more of that come to light now in the pharma space as well. So, there are, for sure things that, that we'll probably continue to see in the space. But I thought maybe I would ask you, really, what types of medical grade products are being created, from cannabis today?
That's a great question. So the one that's most famous, I guess you say, or most well known, is a product called Epidiolex, which is Epidiolex. It's made by a company called GW Pharmaceuticals out of England, and it's a CBD derived medication. So this medication has gone through the clinical trials, has been approved through the FDA for Dravet's syndrome, Dravet's, Dravet's, I think they call it. So it's a rare seizure disorder that helps with children primarily. So it's been approved, but we know doctors are using that off label. So they're using it for different ailments. The challenge with that is, and this is where cannabis is so different than in these other medications. you cannot patent a natural plant. So the challenge is GW Pharmaceuticals had to come in and provide, portions of the plant for novices to where they could patent that whole formulation or formulary. Well, the challenge with cannabis is cannabis actually works better in its whole form. And so it's something called the entourage effect, which states that the plant in its regular form will benefit the body better than in splitting it up into smaller parts. So we're finding that if you can buy this Epidiolex and go through your doctor to get it, right now the price is $32,000 a year. And so you could go if you have legal medical cannabis, or you could get a CBD tincture for $50 a month, and that could probably do about as much as Epidiolex could do. So that's kind of where we are now. But what we see the future being is not just the product and the formularies, but delivery devices. So, for example, if you have an inhaler that you can do with cannabis and you can patent the inhaler, well, then the product is generic, just like those EpiPens. Remember the issue with the EpiPens a couple of years ago where they raised the price tremendously amount, but it wasn't on the actual drug. It was on the delivery device. Right. So what we're seeing in cannabis, and I tell a lot of people, is you see the same trends in the pharmaceutical world, and cannabis is going to come into that. So if you can develop that delivery device, we feel that's going to be a little bit better protection area to protect yourselves as a corporation, because the cannabis patenting abilities for strains yet is still very gray. And so a lot of governments may not protect your patent if you have something like that. And that's where I try to educate groups and pharmaceutical companies to say, you can't follow the same exact path to get something patented as a drug in the regular world as you would in cannabis. You really need to think it through. But the new generation, what we're finding is we're going to see patent development regarding pills and gel caps. For example, we're working with a company out of Canada that actually has developed a pill that has a timed release to where it'll have a certain amount of milligrams of THC that is spread over 2 to 4 hours to where you have that consistent, reliable dose. And so that's where the future is going with cannabis, is accurate dosing. As you know, a lot of people smoke cannabis and we don't feel that's accurate dosing. If it brings them relief, that's fine. But when you're dealing with the massive scale of people, you really need to have accurate, consistent dosing. And so that's what we're noticing from a patent aspect is moving forward in the future, machines or technology to offer reliable, consistent dosing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it obviously, is important that, if you're expecting to get a certain amount, that you do get that certain amount instead of, some variation. Are there actual drugs that are being prescribed today by physicians with cannabis in them?
Epidiolex, and then you have Marinol, Marinol is generic THC, and so that is synthetic THC, and that was created back in the 80s. It's generic now; it's really cheap. And then you have another drug coming up called Dranabanol, and Dranabanol is synthetic THC in basically a powder or pill form, and it's not made from natural cannabinoids. Cannabis is a cannabis plant made from natural cannabinoids are in the plant. And so it's interesting because if you talk about Dranabanol in the United States, everybody knows that's a synthetic FDA approved THC medication. If you talk about that with Europe and Australia, they're all determining it's organic. So a lot of questions are like, hey, do you have Dranabanol overseas? I'm like, I have organic THC Dranabanol, but I do not have synthetic FDA approved Dranabanol because that's only made through 1 or 2 companies. So what we're finding is the cannabis world, especially in Europe, is more pharmaceutical based. And so a lot of people coming in from the pharmaceutical industry are trying to put the same standards on the cannabis space. Well, we're just not there yet. It's just taking a little bit longer to get there. Yeah. But those people with their knowledge are going to be able to be opportunistic on the opportunities coming because they already know how to go through the process of getting a drug approved.
That's a perfect transition. So what's happening on the legislation front with cannabis?
That is a great question. So if you're talking state to state, right now we have 37 states that are legal for medical cannabis, and we have 19 that are legal for recreational or adult use cannabis. The challenge is the federal government, as we know, has not legalized yet. However, there is a lot of talk. There's been a lot of bills up in front of Congress right now. One is called the what was it, the SAFE Act, SAFE, which would open up banking. Another one would be able to open up to where cannabis would be decriminalized at the federal level. Say if you have less than one pound of cannabis on you, there's no federal crime. But between us, the biggest challenge has been it just hasn't been a priority for this administration yet because they've been a little busy. So, yeah. So with all the different issues and now supply chain and the job issues and COVID and it just goes on and on. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to push through research. One of the things that we've done through the National Hemp Association and the Florida Hemp Council is work to get $1 billion grant that goes through the FDA that would go through in the new reconciliation bill that they're working on. And out of this grant, $600 million would go to assist farmers or processors or anybody in the hemp and CBD world to buy equipment. And then the federal government would get a 50% tax credit. The other $400 million would go to set up 4 independent research zones or centers in the United States. One being in New York State, one being in Michigan, one in Oregon, and then one down here in the state of Florida. And so I was instrumental in the research zone aspect of that plan because that's my pet project. I've been working on bringing a research zone, like a new Silicon Valley for hemp and cannabis research to Florida for over 6 years. And so the ability to be on a team to be able to bring that to America, and if this gets passed, America will instantly be able to become the world leader in cannabis research and implementation. And one of the biggest parts of that is industrial hemp. If people are unfamiliar, industrial hemp is the ability to make products naturally, clothing, building materials, food, plastics, polymers, gasoline, all these can be made through industrial hemp. And so we want to start by getting medical cannabis moving and then kind of bring in industrial hemp into all the different industries so we can work on more plant-based products to be able to make the world a better place.
So to that same point, are there other countries that are leading in this space right now?
Well, the definition of leading is we'll have to figure that out. So to give you an idea, Canada right now is the only G7 country that has cannabis legal 100%. However, the country of Germany has medical cannabis. They have about 160,000 patients. To put that in perspective, Canada has 350,000 patients. And to put that even more perspective, I live in Florida, which is the largest medical cannabis operation in the world. We have over 620,000 patients, and we're growing at 5,000 patients a week. So regardless, right now, Canada has the lead. Germany just had elections. In those elections, the new party in control wants to legalize recreational cannabis. Now, if this happens, then Europe is going to have to follow suit, because if you look at a map, Germany's right in the middle of Europe. And so if they legalize, this is now it's going to a public safety issue to where they can't control product going between countries. This is the same problem that we have in the United States. Also, Germany is the largest economy in Europe. So whatever Germany wants, Germany's probably going to get. And so they're looking to legalize. Malta as a country is looking to legalize. North Macedonia has legalized. They're not in the EU. But what we're seeing is more and more countries are coming along. Switzerland just announced this week they're going to legalize recreational. They already have medical legal. So it's only a matter of time. And so what we see is all these new countries are going to need product that's quality and that has GMP or good manufacturing protocols in place. And so we have been preparing for this for over 5 years to be able to start providing these countries with high quality product to ensure that we can keep prices low. Because if prices are too high, what you're going to see is, like we have in California, 80% of all sales are illegal, and the legal markets are having trouble staying afloat due to all the illegal sales.
Wow. Okay. And then, so if a US THC manufacturer wanted to be on the NASDAQ, could they?
They cannot. Well, yes and no. So let me get through the murky waters.
Okay.
So the way it works is, if you're a company that you're on the American exchanges, the NASDAQ, Amex, New York Stock Exchange, you're not allowed to sell an illegal product. So if you're Aurora or Canopy, all these companies that are based out of Canada, they are on the exchanges in America. Well, the problem with that is they can sell THC products in Canada, but they're not allowed to buy any companies here that actually sell THC products. So it's weird. But if you're an American company and you go public in Canada, then you can sell as much THC as you want, but you cannot be on an American exchange. So if you see companies like Canopy Growth, you've got TrueLeave is a very large company now. These types of companies who are large in Florida or large in the United States, they're public in Canada. They're actually larger than the Canadian companies. And to give everybody an idea, 90% of all legal sales in the world of cannabis are in the United States. So this is very difficult for the Canadian-based companies who are on the American exchanges. They cannot buy a company in the United States where 90% of the sales are. So that's where you started to see these companies move into CBD purchases, trying to buy these CBD companies and get ready. So when America flips the switch, then they'll immediately have a national presence in the States.
Okay. And you told me in our prep call that your organization's involved in bringing a COVID vaccine to Africa. Can you tell listeners a little bit about that and why Africa?
Sure. So this deal with COVID vaccine was totally brought up due to cannabis. So we were working with a deal in early 2000 that it was a PPE deal because we were kind of roped into it. A lot of people were protective equipment due to COVID. Well, one of the lawyers we met was tied into the Italian government. And so he came to us in January of this year and said, the Italian government is not going to follow through with an investment they made with an Italian COVID manufacturer. Can you help them? And we said, okay, I don't really know how we're going to help them. So what we found out is that this company has a COVID vaccine in its stage 2 trials, and they just finished stage 2, and they have a 99% effective rate against COVID in the stage 2 trials, which is amazing. Well, the problem is they waited so long and the funding was delayed that Pfizer, Merck, and Johnson & Johnson took away the European market regarding sales. So they said they knew we were from Africa. Can you help us in Africa? We're like, okay. So luckily, we were working with multiple pharmaceutical companies in Africa regarding cannabis medication. We went to them, and one of the groups we're with has a vaccine division. And so we started talking to them, and then we had connections through multiple governments in Africa. And so now, flash forward into October 2021, we've just signed a memo of understanding with the vaccine manufacturer that I can't mention right now, but once it goes public, I can, based out of Italy. And that vaccine manufacturer has guaranteed 500,000 to 1 billion doses for one government and potentially multiple governments in Africa. And in return, they're giving the licensure agreements and licensure contracts to these countries in Africa to where they can start manufacturing COVID vaccine in Africa. And this is a very big deal because, as you all know, Africa has been lost in the COVID vaccine. There's less than 5% of their population is currently vaccinated. So we really need to start pushing new measures into getting vaccinations into this continent. And so this deal is very delicate. It would be the largest public-private partnership for COVID vaccine in the world. And so we feel that we can raise a lot of money for this. It's going to be a corporate bond on the Austrian exchange. And that will allow these companies to open up and start manufacturing COVID vaccine and to prepare for the next pandemic, which may come down the road.
Wow. And it's interesting from the standpoint of, I know based on other interviews that I've done here that, countries outside of the US or larger countries, let's put it that way, just seem to be left behind oftentimes. And so it is interesting that there is a pathway for them to get the things that they need. And I know we've seen, let's just take, for example, India and the impact COVID has had there and their population. I could only imagine, in Africa, what it's doing there as well.
Well, the big challenge is they don't have the internal infrastructure that we have here to do just disbursement of drugs. One of the problems is Pfizer, that drug has to be so cold. How are you going to keep it cold in Africa? Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of logistical nightmares. This drug coming through, it doesn't have to be refrigerated. It's 2 doses. That's one challenge, but it can be easily transported, and the ability to start doing the manufacturing. One of the things I love about this is it enables investors to come in on a vaccine deal, but we're able to educate them on cannabis. So as we get the vaccine up and running, we can educate them about investing in cannabis. And we want to use that as an investment vehicle to build up our business in Africa, because we want to be a good partner there to where we can be the OPEC of cannabis oil. So when America builds up and we go legal and all these countries start to build up their laws to where they allow cannabis and hemp 100% legal, we're going to need high quality, volume-based product at a cheap price in order to move this industry forward globally. And we want to tap into Africa and their native lands, their landrace strains there. They originate in Africa for all their medicinal qualities, but as well for all their pristine land to grow hemp that's going to be pristine to help build homes, build industrial products. We're currently working with a group to make hemp-based sanitary napkins for women and tampons that can be biodegradable and they won't hurt the environment and also help the economy there. So there's just so much opportunity in Africa, but it takes a long time to make that opportunity a reality.
And for one of the things that you had said that your organization focuses on is hemp and cannabis research funding. So what sort of research is needed?
That's a great question. When we're dealing with hemp and cannabis, one of the main things is that you have to bring the right groups in to help start studying it. So, for example, a lot of groups, there was a lady named Dr. Sue Sicily. She's studying psilocybin right now as well as cannabis. She's studying cannabis as it relates to PTSD for veterans. So we're seeing a lot of that to where cannabis is coming in on specific diagnoses, whether it be a cancer diagnosis and how does cancer help. I saw a study that's starting in England regarding glioblastomas, which is a brain cancer, and dealing with cannabis and its ability to affect that. We're also starting to see studies regarding cannabis and diabetes and the controlling of blood sugar. So imagine eventually taking a low dose cannabis based pill like a nutritional supplement every day, and you don't have to take any diabetic medication. So the challenge is right now, a lot of the companies who would sponsor these studies are publicly traded in America. So they're not going to risk any problems with the SEC or the NASDAQ or New York Stock Exchange by sponsoring a study that's been on an illegal product. So what we're seeing is a lot of these studies are being done in Israel. Israel is now the world leader in cannabis research because it's 100% legal there. And we're starting to see these studies move into Europe as well as Australia. We do have some, of course, in Canada and a couple in America, but in America has made it so difficult to do cannabis-based studies that a lot of times these studies are done overseas.
Okay. And then what do you think is coming next in the cannabis industry? What do you think will happen, next that most people will see?
That's a tough question because there's just so much. And I think one of the biggest things that I would say is coming is normalization. And a lot of people don't understand that the psychological and the sociological impact of cannabis is going to be the two areas that allow cannabis to move forward. So what's going to happen in the future as we go more of a medical wellness / recreational view of cannabis, you're going to see, my generation and above, basically late 40s and above, start looking at cannabis more as a nutritional supplement or wellness device rather than maybe something just to get somebody high. And I think it's all a part of this push for more plant-based medicine. That's why you're going to see psilocybin come up, psychedelics, which are pseudo plant-based, depending. Those are going to start coming up because I think the world and America and the world are kind of tired of the way things have been done so far. They feel there's a lot of ways to make things better. And I think cannabis plays a huge role in that because it's been around for thousands of years. It's the only drug or plant that we know of that has has cannabinoids, and our body has what they call an endocannabinoid system, which is a lock and key system that ties in directly to our DNA to accept cannabis as a medicine. So I think the largest thing I think you're going to start to see is this ideological shift on cannabis, and that's going to bring more people like you and others in with a professional background into the industry, which keeps decreasing the stigma, which allows more people to try to use cannabis, CBD, hemp-based materials on a wellness or medical basis.
Yeah, for sure. I look forward to, some of those shifts, but at the same time, like we started with, right? I do see some of the stigma as well, and I'm in Colorado. So,
Yeah.
so it's not like, we don't have our fair share of dispensaries and things like that. But at the same time, I look forward to people benefiting if there's, medical treatments that can, help people. I look forward to people benefiting from that as well, and seeing this research continue to grow.
And the challenge is, to be honest, is Big Pharma has to figure out a way to make money in this. And once they do, all of a sudden, all these hurdles will go away. They'll move it to market. And I think a lot of that is once it becomes federally legal. And let me give you a perfect example of that. Here in the state of Florida, we passed through a constitutional amendment in 2016, medical cannabis. When the medical cannabis stores opened, the rate of people signing up for medical cannabis licenses was relatively slow, maybe 1,000 people a week. And then now we're at the point where we're in 2021. We took us over a year and a half to get to 100,000 patients. Now we're going up almost 200,000 patients a year. And that is because the stigma has declined, and we're seeing more senior citizens starting to get super tired of taking 13 drugs a day, which is the national average for seniors, and their friends are benefiting from cannabis. And we're starting to see this decline in the ideology in the older generation. And I tell everybody, once the senior citizens adopt it, then now mass marketing and mass adoption is going to happen, because they're usually the last demographic to accept. So once they've accepted as a medical, then you're going to start to see more of cannabis come along. And also an interesting side note, Don, is that the younger generation, they're finding that the amount of alcohol consumption in people under 30 has declined the last 5 years. And the amount of psychedelics and cannabis consumption has increased over the last 5 years. Wow. And some people worry about that is going to be a bad trend. I find it to be a wonderful trend, because if we look at all the kids who have died over the years through alcohol, poisoning, a lot of different problems like that. And also the problems in society, people getting in fights, abusing their spouses, so forth and so on. We feel cannabis can be a better alternative to be able to do that, because we find cannabis can increase empathy. And I feel like if we as a society have more empathy involved, then we're going to be a better society in general.
Yeah. So there are 3 questions that I like to ask every guest. What inspires you?
What inspires me is the ability to do something bigger than myself and to be able to make a positive impact on the world moving forward.
Okay, so not going to let you get away with that overall. Give me an example.
Well, what we're creating right now, Don, is we're creating an ability to where we can bring people a new career and be able to change the dynamics of the healthcare industry globally, moving from chemical-based drugs to plant-based drugs. We feel like that alone is going to have a whole mental shift, as I've been talking about. On top of the cryptocurrency work we're working on, this is a legal cryptocurrency through a sovereign nation. And so what people don't understand when this does come out is 50% of all profits are going to go to help save indigenous nations in the planet. So imagine getting a group like Apple or Amazon or Google behind our cryptocurrency, to where we're the legal structure. They can handle all of their technology. We just make it legal in the States. And if we can have hundreds of millions of transactions around the world daily, and we're making a small percentage on those transactions, imagine what that money can turn around and help save the world with, and also help a lot of people. So those are the types of major projects that I signed on with my group, with the crypto. We've been with them for 5 years. And a lot of these things are literally going to be new ways to save the world, as well as new ways to help people who really need help around the world.
Very good. And what concerns you?
What concerns me? I would say in general, what concerns me is the ideology, especially here in the States, people feeling like if somebody disagrees with you, they are your enemy. And I think people need to understand that we need to have the ability to have a better discussion on issues. I see a lot of fear. Have you noticed that if you look at the latest demographics, Africa, the white Caucasian people are declining at a rapid rate? This is something we all knew. And I think there's a lot of concerns about more minorities in the United States becoming more of a melting pot. And I feel like that's one of the reasons that you see the Republican Party doing what they're doing. Those things concern me. But I think to be an optimist, I feel like we really need to tap into what the future is going to be. And the future is going to be more equality and more opportunity. And so we've tried to make more of that focus in our company. And that's one of the reasons that you see us focusing on Africa, because we feel this, especially cannabis and psilocybin, are going to be global commodities. And if we can help people across the value chain and do products that are going to help all the way from the farmer all the way through to the end patient, that's the best way we can move forward. But the ideology and the strength of that ideology is a concern for me.
Yeah, healthy discourse is I mean, it's interesting to me. I also, I mean, obviously there are things that I do that are fairly public, even in the extensions of my business, like this podcast. And just having the ability to have a disagreement with somebody, publicly, and then also be able to sort of challenge each other's thinking is a way to expand your thinking versus, you don't have to necessarily have an argument where where it becomes physical or an absolute, outrage. So with that, I agree. Healthy discourse is a way of expanding your mind and really challenging your way of thinking, and should be something that we take on as a society. And I question sometimes, exactly where we're going with this.
But I think we're as an optimistic person, I think that we are moving away from that. I think the younger generation is helping us that tremendously. They're saying we're not going to tolerate this anymore, and we're going to move forward. And I think the younger generation is more open to think about that. And so I'm at the age now where I can kind of see both sides. That's like the Generation X, which I'm in, is kind of get caught between the boomers and the millennials. So I'm all about, joining forces and using the old knowledge as well as the new technology to kind of mesh to form a new world that we're all happy to be in. Yes, that's going to take time, but imagine where we've come through as a society, and we're on the cusp of making cannabis legal. And I think once you make cannabis legal, people don't understand the amount of jobs that are going to be created in this country. We already have 330,000 jobs in the cannabis space. And so regarding that, I've always been, people have been poo-pooing me and disagreeing with me on cannabis for years. But the great thing, Don, is that time will always prove me right. So that's why I don't get upset.
Just got to keep waiting, right?
Right. Exactly.
What excites you?
Well, what excites me? That's a great question. I think I get excited in the fact that I have found my purpose in life. And so the ability to understand that I can use all the skills I've developed through my entire life for this project that I was destined to lead and to bring this into the forefront, that is what excites me tremendously. Also, what excites me is to see my daughter, who's a senior at University of Florida, get all of her. She just got accepted to an internship in New York City next summer for United Bank of Switzerland. And the reason, I thank you, and I'm happy for her. But to see her work her tail off, and she speaks 3 languages. She lived in 4 continents, and she's only 22 years old, and she is prepared for this to be able to move forward in the world. She wants to do mergers and acquisitions for UBS in Singapore. And she grew up in America, which is very rare. So to see her and her hard work now starting to pay off all these years that she worked on, that is what excites me tremendously, because I'm her biggest fan.
Yeah, I love Singapore. I overall love visiting the country. I think every time that I go, though, there's a shortage of pepper crab and chili crab just as I get ready to leave the country, because I nonstop eat while I'm there. So that's
well, Don, I told my daughter, I said, I'm not going to be visiting you anytime soon, because 2 days ago they announced they are putting a man to death for trafficking 1 kilogram of cannabis. I said, yeah, you're going to come see me in Malaysia. Okay. So.
Yeah. Just across the bay.
Right. Exactly.
So this is typically where I wrap up the show, but I just wanted to mention just really quickly, because, I always post in the show notes ways that people can get a hold of you. So in the show notes, there of course will be, a link to your LinkedIn and any other social media that we can, possibly tie you to. But you have a podcast with your brother. People want to watch that. Where could they look up your podcast?
So our podcast is the Cannabis Report with Michael Patterson. You can find it on YouTube. Just type in the Cannabis Report with Michael Patterson. It'll come up. I have an identical twin brother. His name is Mark Patterson, and he is he reads the news, and he's the I can't even talk about it. He's the producer of the show. And so my brother has been in radio. He was in radio for many years. So we always dreamed about doing a radio show. Well, we feel the Cannabis Report is the next best thing. And what we do is we go through a format of going through the news and doing some analysis on the global news so the average person can understand why this matters. And then we usually have a guest in the cannabis space who goes through what they do in the space. And it can be from a regulatory expert to a product manufacturer. It could be a politician. It could be a lot of different types of people. And so we just finished season 1, and you can go on, you can find it on LinkedIn too. You can go to my LinkedIn page, which is Michael Patterson, U.S. Cannabis Pharmaceutical Research. I'm the most followed cannabis professional in the world on LinkedIn. But all of our episodes are right there on my page. And definitely, it's funny because people reach out to me and say, hey, I watched your podcast on so-and-so. I said, oh, so you're the one.
You're the one. Right. You use the same thing with me. So
right, yeah. right. I love it. And so I find that that was the first season. We're looking to move into season 2, into a bigger studio if we can, and add more services to that show, because I feel like it's a great resource for people who just want to find out about the industry, but maybe don't want to know everything about it, just kind of want to know what's going on. We like to do it, and I enjoy talking to people directly. And so also we're looking to do a live broadcast next summer from the World Cbd Awards, which I'm the chair. It's going to be in Barcelona, Spain. It's the only independent, objective competition for CBD products in the world. And so we had our inaugural one in 2019, which is a huge success. This time we're going to have a trade show attached to it. And so I can't wait. So to be in an area doing our live broadcast of the podcast in Spain and having all these great people around. So I use it as an ability to bring great people on to tell about the industry and to have a good time.
Very good. Well, Michael Patterson, thank you so much for being on the show today. And thank you for spending time.
Thanks, Don. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Life Science Success. For complete details about this podcast, including show notes, how to get in touch with guests, and more episodes, please visit www.lifesciencesuccess.com. If there's someone you'd like for us to invite to the show as a guest, please let me know by sending me a message at the podcast website. Please click subscribe on your favorite podcast app, share the podcast, or tell a friend about it. And last but not least, rate the podcast. Thank you again.